Slide there. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Unified Development Code workshops. We appreciate your attendance and participation with us this afternoon. At the beginning here, just like to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded. Just make sure everybody's aware of that. And we look forward to getting some good feedback and information from our community today. We have a variety of staff members who will be presenting on topics. The flow for this meeting will be this introduction to begin with. We'll move into some overview presentations from the various staff who are being responsible for the breakout groups that we will have. We'll then break out into topic-specific groups for more topic-specific discussion, questions and answers. Then there will be an opportunity about midway through to change groups. We realize there's a lot of material and folks may have interest in more than one area. And so we have built that in. And if 2 is not enough, we will be doing this again. And there will be opportunities to weigh in on those dates as well. So if you want to stay in the same group the entire time, you are absolutely welcome to do so. This is just an opportunity for people who have an interest in more than one kind of thing. Next, Tom. So we are here talking about the Unified Development Code. There are 5 purposes as shown on the screen that we're doing this for. Some of this is implementing community priorities identified through a range of planning topics, working on the organization and reader friendliness of the document, housing, access, the built environment, and then state compliance. And I just note that we are having a new legislative session that is underway right now. There's always a lot of bills that get proposed, and some of those may affect this project as well. So we will be keeping an eye on those, and there may be some changes in response to state directives as this project moves along. Next. So updating the Unified Development Code is certainly not a new thing. As you can see on the slide, the city has replaced its zoning standards and other standards regularly since we first adopted them back in 1935. As the community continues to modify and the circumstances, not just within, but around the community modify, we need to keep the code up to date so it's responsive to the needs of today, as well as our future. Next. We do have a particular schedule that we are working on. The state in 2023 session gave us a specific deadline of May 17th of 2026 to complete this project and some work that we need to do in order to comply with state law. As shown with the arrow there, we are in the engagement component. This is the second phase of engagement on this project. After we have the engagement and get that all buttoned up, we will report that back out. And we will move into drafting and revisions. There is a draft code which is posted on Engage Bozeman right now. And so you can see the thinking as of today, but we have been undertaking a lot of engagement and expect that there will be some revisions in that draft beginning in the spring of 25. There'll be an opportunity for further review of that draft before moving into any kind of adoption or hearing process and implementation. Next. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over. We have some city commissioners here with us, and I'd like to give them a moment to say hello and introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Terry Cunningham, and really interested in this sort of deep dive phase 2 of the process. And Commissioner Fisher and I will be doing a lot of listening this afternoon, and interested in hearing the specific feedback that we have during our breakout group. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, this is Douglas Fisher, also on the City Commission. I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of a Monday, and I am looking forward to hearing all these comments as we get a little deeper into this process.
Thank you very much. We're now going to roll over to the staff presentations, and we'll start with Nick Ross, who is our Director of Transportation Engineering. Over to Nick.
All right. Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. As Chris mentioned, I serve as your Director of Transportation and Engineering and am closely tied into the transportation updates to our Unified Development Code. So this will be a briefing, a primer of what the UDC really does, and hopefully will serve to engage some good conversation in the breakout sessions. So let's get underway, Tom. All right, so I always like starting these conversations with an inconvenient truth. And this is one of my favorite planning truthisms. But it's an old saying that we aren't stuck in traffic, we are traffic. What this really means or intends to imply is that transportation decisions and traffic are really a collection of all of our individual choices of how, when, and where we move around. That applies not only to future development that is captured in the UDC, but also our existing infrastructure and how we build our own projects. So it's important to remember that in the UDC, we're required to hold ourselves in the existing city to the same standards that we apply to the new development that does come in. Go ahead, Tom. So how do we get there? Well, what we develop often, if not always, determines how we move. So the issues of land use and transportation are inextricably intertwined with one another, and they're both very important to consider when looking at our development standards. So what we're here to talk about today is the Unified Development Code. That is just only one document, though, that really serves to capture all of transportation management in Bozeman. The Unified Development Code says what we develop now and into the future. That code then leans on two other very important documents the city has, our Transportation Master Plan and our engineering and design standards that really define the how things get built, that get approved through the UDC. So our Transportation Master Plan outlines roughly our long-range vision for transportation in the city. This defines where our primarily our arterial and collector network of streets, our main streets, are going to be located and what capacity they need to serve. The Unified Development Code then layers in standards for how the local streets and site plans are developed within that network. Our TMP, or Transportation Master Plan, also lays out the future projects we expect to need to take on. And it also defines more policy goals and policy intent behind things like multimodal transportation and safety. Our Bozeman city design standards were just recently updated, and that gets even more detail about how our streets, trails, and paths actually get built and designed. Go ahead, Tom. So why is this important? Well, how we move ultimately guides a lot of our quality of life. I might be biased since I am the transportation director, but transportation has a strong thread into many, if not all, of our city plans and documents. First and foremost being Bozeman's climate plan. We in Bozeman have a high ethic towards environmental stewardship and climate adaptation, and how we move and how we build our places are very much tied together with a lot of the emissions and environmental impacts of transportation. Also, how safely we move, very much tied to how we build our places to begin with. So Bozeman City Commission a few years back adopted our Bozeman Streets Are For Everyone plan with the explicit goal of eliminating severe and fatal crashes on our streets. And so this takes a holistic approach to traffic safety for all users, not just vehicles and people who drive, but also people who walk and bike as well, and looking to make sure that we build our places, build our streets in a manner that is safe and comfortable and inviting for everyone. And then finally, affordability is top of everybody's mind in Bozeman, and we certainly understand that at the director level. How we build our places through the UDC has a drastic impact on how expensive it is, not only to live and pay for housing, but also our typically second biggest cost for a household, which is transportation expenses. So land use and transportation very much align in the sense to look for ways that we can reduce the cost of transportation for each one of our residents, and therefore make that cost of living a little bit easier for us all to handle. Go ahead, Tom. So with that, we are very excited for you to join us and help us shape not only land use, but also transportation for the future of Bozeman. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Hi, folks. I'm Mitch Overton, and I am the Director of the Parks and Recreation Department. And our area will be the focus topic area of environment, open space, natural areas, parks, and urban forest. Our department includes parks and trails, recreation, which includes aquatics, the forestry division, and the cemetery division. For our breakout session today, or our breakout room, I also have Addie Jaden, our park planner, who serves as our design and development manager, and Alex Nordquist, our forestry division manager. I will now do a quick overview of those two divisions of the department before we get into the focus areas. Next. So in the forestry division, we're responsible for all parks, cemetery, and boulevard trees. We have inventoried all of these trees throughout the city. That is just over 27,000 trees to date. In that inventory, we record things like species, condition, diameter, and all the work that has occurred on those trees. They do live in an interactive map that is on the Bozeman City's website. And so anyone is welcome to go to that map, find any trees that they're interested in, and view that data that I just mentioned. In this division, we employ 5 full-time arborists who are responsible for managing all of these trees in the urban forest. And that includes some of the things here on your screen: pruning, removals, planting, stump grinding, and all emergency storm response. We are currently operating under an urban forestry management plan and emerald ash borer course of action plan that were both adopted in 2016. And they set out goals for maintenance schedules and diversity throughout our system. We are now scheduled to update that plan in this next fiscal year, which will start July 1st. That'll be fiscal year 2026. And an additional initiative that we're working on now is an outreach effort that we call Branch Out Bozeman, that we partner with the Gallatin Watershed Council. This enables us to plant more trees throughout the system and particularly look at water quality as we move forward and how we can plant more trees to enhance our environment. Next. So a quick overview for our Parks and Trails division. Parks and Trails is responsible not only for all the parks and trails throughout the city, but also all associated planning and development that occurs on new parks and parks associated with subdivisions. We're currently sit right at 900 acres of parkland throughout our city that's spread out through 81 different parks. That measures out to right at 17.8 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. That's a national metric that we utilize, and the national average is currently 10.6. So Bozeman sits well above the national average, which through our planning efforts, our community has expressed high value in maintaining that high average. We also sit currently at 118 miles of trail and pathway. Those differences are trail are really your natural finds and natural trailways, and your pathways are paved and multi-use. That is miles of trail and pathway in the city of Bozeman that the Parks and Trails Division maintains and operates, and some in partnership actually with our friends in transportation. And that's very important that it's inside the city and well above the national average, which in all communities inside their municipalities averages out to about 16 miles of trail and pathway. We manage this with a full-time staff of 29 park workers, and then we add some additional staff in the spring, summer, and fall, about 25 seasonal and short-term workers. We recently adopted our park recreation and active transportation plan. This is a comprehensive plan for about a 10-year windshield looking out here on how to enhance our system. This was done through heavy public engagement. And our primary goal areas that came out of that plan were equity and access, programs, places, and partnerships, active transportation, and natural resources. We're now in the phase of implementing that plan, and it's just a few examples of how we're doing that, of items that were specifically called out in that plan. One is the Cattail Creek corridor. This is an anchor route type of trail system. It's a 3.5 mile multi-use trail that runs north and south, and with associated parkland along its entire course. We also implement these recommendations through a capital improvement plan, and then this UDC update. So what we're doing today in utilizing recommendations from that plan and then what we hear from the public to recommend for updates in our Unified Development Code. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Kruger. I'm the current planning manager for the city of Bozeman in the planning division. I'm here assisting the engineering division with the wetlands topic. They have been working on a tangential but related code amendment to the wetlands chapter of the code that somewhat predates and is separate from the overall UDC update. Next slide, please. Back in 2022, the city started a project to update the current regulations in Article 6 of the code. These regulations apply to human constructed, but also natural waterways. We've had wetland protection in our code for quite some time. These regulations interact with many municipal functions, stormwater, high groundwater management, et cetera, but they also interact heavily with state required permitting and federal wetland protections. Our current code focuses mainly on avoidance where possible, but recognizes impacts do occur to wetlands. Next slide, please. So in 2022, thank you. In 2022, the City Commission had a goal to create a local wetland bank. What is a wetland bank? It's an area of wetlands that is supported by wetland credits that can be purchased by developers that are impacting wetlands. There are regional wetland banks, but the Commission desired to create a local one, and so they asked staff to adjust the wetland regulations to create that opportunity to mitigate for impacts to wetlands locally. There was a draft code that was put together, and public outreach occurred in 2022, and the project was moving towards completion. Next slide, please. The Commission paused that effort in 2022 and requested additional information. The city hired a wetland consultant, William Kleindell, PhD, who is an instructor and professor up at MSU, to assist with the project. We are currently drafting those regulations and working on public meetings and workshops. We'll be presenting those draft recommendations to the public and advisory boards. This is the schedule moving forward. And as I said, it is somewhat separate, but from the overall UDC update, but we are interested in getting your input on this topic because there are many areas in the code where this topic is interrelated to other development regulations. Next slide, please.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Natalie Meyer. I'm the Sustainability Manager for the City of Bozeman. I lead a small team tasked with climate and sustainability initiatives for the city. We're responsible for tracking the citywide implementation of the 2020 climate plan, and we provide staff support to the Citizens Sustainability Advisory Board. Much of the work we do focuses on building energy efficiency from our own building stock within the city of Bozeman to education, outreach, and incentives in the community. We also assist with renewable energy development opportunities, clean vehicle deployment, as well as working with partners to advance community resilience and local food solutions. Next slide. One of the goals of the UDC update was to support the implementation of the climate plan, which, as you just saw, is a policy document that spans 6 pretty broad areas related to energy efficiency, renewable energy, resilient neighborhoods, clean and efficient transportation, sustainable waste reduction, and green space, food systems, and the natural environment. Starting in 2022 and 2023, the Sustainability Division worked with community development on a review of the UDC, and through an iterative process, prioritized and refined several areas of focus identified on this slide. They included facilitation of EV charging, specifics specifying allowances related to shared solar, energy storage, and district energy as essential services, enhancing compact development and walkability, creating that efficient urban design, reduced parking requirements in commercial developments, expanded bike parking for long and short-term uses, as well as adding recycling and composting facilities to site plans. And then there were also several urban agriculture allowances supporting small producers. I should mention that we had planned to incorporate EV-ready design standards for commercial developments before the 2023 legislature passed a bill preventing local governments from any requirements in zoning or the building code related to EV infrastructure or solar. The Sustainability Advisory Board held 4 work sessions on the UDC, and the board ultimately recommended approval of the proposed text related to these items, and requested further engagement, which is where we are today. So look forward to the conversation, and thanks for your time.
Good afternoon. I'm Sean Coates, the City Utilities Director. Big part of the discussion with the UDC update is what does Bozeman's water supply look like? So next slide. Brief outline here of the discussion today. I'll talk about Bozeman's water supply, the water rights and reliable water supply for the city, our integrated water resources plan, which is essentially our 50-year water supply plan, our water conservation efforts, and then lastly, I'll talk about our water adequacy policy for new development. And then, okay, so Bozeman gets its water supply essentially from 3 sources. We get about 80% of it out of drainages to the south, meaning Bozeman Creek and Highlight Creek, as well as about 20% of our water supply out of the Lyman area, out of the Bridget Range. So how much water does Bozeman presently have? So if we look at our legal water rights, we have about 16,500 acre feet of water per year. And on a 1 in 50-year drought condition, so basically a very conservative water supply condition, we have almost 12,000 acre feet of water per year available. In 2024, we used 7,100 acre feet for that year. So if you translate that into how much of our water supply did we use in 2024, we used about 43% of it. If it happened to be a massive drought year, we would have used about 60% of our water supply in that heavy drought condition. So just to put that acre foot number in perspective, 1 acre foot of water is approximately equal to 1 foot of water over an entire football field. 1 acre foot of water can supply about 4 single family homes each year, or about 8 condo or apartment units each year. Next slide, please, Tom. So how much water does Bozeman have after accounting for approved development? So we've got about 944 acre feet of water demand associated with currently approved development. So if we tack that onto our 2024 water use, you can see that in a typical water year, we've used just about half of our water supply. In a heavy drought condition year, we would have used about 68% of our water supply, accounting for the demand that we don't see on the system now because it's being built. So next slide. So next I'll talk about our 2013 Integrated Water Resources Plan. So this is the city's 50-year water supply plan. And what this does is it outlines short-term, mid-term, and long-term water supply options for the city to work on developing. We are just kicking off an update to this plan, so there's going to be quite an opportunity for community outreach on this. We'll have pretty substantial community outreach effort on this plan, probably over the entire next year. So we'll be looking for that more to follow soon. So a few of the highlights of the 2013 Integrated Water Resources Plan, it essentially recommends a portfolio of how we go about adding water supply to the city. And the biggest element of that plan is water conservation. So that plan says we want to get basically half of our 50-year water supply just by doing water conservation efforts. And we've got a great start on that. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. We also want to go after some new supply development. So basically our strategy there currently is to optimize our existing water resources, do things like water main replacements where we might have leaks in mains and then we want to fix that so we're no longer losing that water into the ground. And then we also are going after some groundwater. Next slide, please. Talking a little bit about water conservation, we have quite a few voluntary programs, and we've got about 5 full-time staff that fill out these programs. And this has been a wildly successful program. And I'll get to the numbers in a little bit, but some of the programs include rebate incentives. So if somebody changes out a shower head or a toilet that is a lower water use fixture, they can get a rebate for that effort. We do free water use assessments, which is a big effort of what we do in the summertime. We always have more people sign up for these than we actually have capacity to do. So this is a very, very successful program, and we get a lot of water conservation work done there. We've got a handful of other resources there. I won't talk about those in detail here, but we can talk about that in the breakout session. Next slide, please. Some of the major water conservation policies that we have in place. First of all, we have a water conservation-based rate structure, meaning that especially in the summertime, as our water customers use more water, that water becomes more expensive the more they use. So it's intended to incentivize good conservation practices. We have permanent mandatory outdoor watering restrictions, meaning you can only water on certain days of the week based on your address. We have a drought management plan, so we've got various tools that we can put in place if we are in a heavy drought condition and we need to conserve extra water. We also recently implemented a water efficient landscaping ordinance, meaning any new development that comes online has to meet the requirements of this ordinance. So there are some very strict elements of that. So for example, a single family home, if they were to come on today, they would be limited to about 30% turf on the irrigable landscape, whereas historically the average coverage with turf has been about 80% on a single family lot. So that's basically new development going forward. That does not impact prior homes or development. Those are grandfathered in. And our voluntary programs are intended to address those, but new development going forward has to be in line with the new water efficient landscaping ordinance. And then lastly, I'll point out here that in 2023, the city adopted a water conservation and efficiency plan, which outlines 18 measures for water conservation for the city to implement over time. We've implemented 11 of those measures already, and we're working on the remaining 7. So just a slide here to show how well that water conservation program has worked. So if you look, at the left-hand y-axis in millions of gallons, so those are the green bars that you're looking at. It shows how many gallons we used that year. If you look at the right-hand side, that's population. That relates to the blue bar, and that shows our population growth over the last 10 years. So basically, that water conservation program has been in place over a decade. And what you see here is the population growth rate is higher than our growth rate on the water use. And so we've had a highly effective water conservation program. And then the last slide I'll talk about here is the city's water adequacy policy that went in place in the 1980s. And basically what this policy says is that when new development comes online, that new development has to offset its water impact. So they can do that and several methods. One of those is to bring water rights to the table. Another one is for them to pay cash in lieu of water rights, and then the city uses that cash in lieu program to buy water rights and develop our water system. And developers also have an option to put into place additional water conservation measures to bring down their initial demands. So that's water adequacy in a nutshell, and we'll get into more in the breakout session.
And I'm Chris Saunders, and I'll cover the parking section, which is our last piece of this. The city's had parking regulations for many years. We include both maximum and minimum standards for parking, and we do have standards both for residential and commercial uses. We have provisions that allow for on-site, off-site, and a variety of other methods by which parking can be satisfied. Parking is a subject we hear a lot about in general, as well as in association with individual projects. And the parking standards do vary by the type of the use and the location. We currently have about 22, 24 different categories of commercial activities that are in our parking standards process. And frankly, they don't match up particularly well with the use categories that you see in use tables that identify what happens where within the community. One part of parking that we do have that we don't get a lot of conversation about is the design standards that we have for parking. And so that's how big is a parking stall, what kind of circulation do you require, those kinds of things. So those are also part of the parking standards. And so that all collectively is our parking. We do have standards also for parking for bicycles. That is a minimum standard for any kind of commercial activity or industrial activity for both staff and customers to use. Next, please. The draft code that is currently out on the Engage Bozeman site maintains the idea of minimum and maximum standards, maintains separated standards for commercial and residential uses, but it does make some changes. The commercial uses are much consolidated from in the 20s down to about 7, with a much simpler process to calculate those and apply them. They continue to vary by the location and the type of the use. And there is less of a reliance on providing parking on an individual site basis and greater emphasis on the opportunity to consider parking as a more holistic approach, where a group of properties can assemble together and come up with a more holistic approach to their parking, where they can share those resources and lessen some of the costs. One of the factors that we are considering, I mentioned the legislature is meeting last year or last session and this session both. There are bills being proposed which have the potential to affect what the city ultimately adapts and adopts for its parking standards. And so we appreciate your input on this, and we certainly will take it very seriously, but we also may get to do something else depending on what the state ends up ultimately giving us direction to do. So parking is an important element in the physical development of our community. It consumes a lot of space, generates a lot of stormwater. It's also something that most of us use every day as we go about our life. And so it's a topic with many nuances, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts from you. Next. So just before we hit the breakouts, we'd just like to remind everybody that the Engage Bozeman website is the location where we maintain and keep schedules of events, the upcoming events that are coming for this project, including the activity on Wednesday, which is an in-person version of this meeting at the fairgrounds, and also several others of different topics. So please check in there and see which you may wish to attend. And that closes out our intro. And so Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you describe how this breakout session is going to work.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. We have 6 breakout rooms for you to choose from: wetlands, transportation, parks, trees, open space, water, sustainability, and parking. So I'm going to hit open all rooms, and you can choose which room you'd like to be a part of. And you do have the freedom to move from room to room throughout the session. And I will remain in this main room if you have questions.